What's up, Fate family? Jarvis Guide and Voyager Arts YT here, and today we're going to be talking about Marvel Studios' The Marvels, specifically the film's box office performance. Because recently, industry publication, I guess you could call them Box Office Pro, recently released some figures for the movie, some domestic total predictions, and they are not good. And what's even worse is the fact that they've been pretty accurate when it comes to these recent MCU movies. They've had some pretty accurate opening weekend and domestic lifetime total ranges today. So in this video, we're going to be extrapolating their data and finding out just how much money the Marvels is going to lose, because I calculated a ton of different scenarios and there is no way that this movie enters profit. It would honestly be sad if it weren't so funny. Either way, let's get into it. All right, man, here we are in the Obsidian editor. And before we start off, I just want to make it clear to everybody what the statistics are that we're working with here. So this entire analysis is going to be based on Box Office Pro's opening weekend estimate of 50 to 75 million, which would be absolutely horrible. That's lower than what Quantumania did earlier this year. And Box Office Pro also gave us a lifetime domestic estimate of 121 to 189 million. That's also really, really bad. That's worse than Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Based on these stats alone, that would give us a leg range of 1.61 to 3.78 legs. And if you don't know what legs are, it's basically the domestic total divided by the biggest opening weekend. So it just shows you how well a film is doing over time. If your legs are above 2.5 or honestly 2.6, then you're probably doing all right. Some films even get up into 7 times legs, like some of the Illumination movies. Marvel Studios haven't been doing too well in terms of their legs lately. We have some more recent Marvel Studios legs right here. We have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, 3.03 times legs. Mostly because the opening weekend was pretty anemic for this film. It was much lower than it should have been, but it was able to recover, and so it ended up with decent legs in the process. Ant-Man 3's legs were pretty bad, 2.02x, because the film got dog shit reception and it opened way too large, and no idea how it opened to 100 mil. Captain Marvel pre-Endgame film had 2.7x legs, but to be fair, the opening weekend was very large, so it's sort of a Captain America Civil War situation where most of the people that were going to see it saw it in opening weekend. You see a similar phenomenon with like Spider-Man No Way Home. And Eternals legs were at 2.31x, which gave it a 164 mil total. Now, the only reason I put this here was because there were certain publications making comparisons to Eternals, but this film was released in the middle of COVID, and there were just a whole confluence of factors that forced it to bomb, which is a true shame since I actually kind of liked Eternals. But either way, man, these are the stats we're opening up with, and I think it's also important to note that the Marvels has a budget of 225 to 275 million, which, if my calculations are correct, would place the break-even point around, assuming 2.75. The break-even point is at least $618 million. That's probably more around 625. That kind of matches up with a lot of the other Marvel Studios films we've been seeing. So yeah, the film basically needs to make $600 million to come anywhere close to profit. All right, so with that said, let's take a look at some of my other statistics here. Yeah, so here we are. My international and worldwide predictions for the Marvels are extrapolated from the domestic international ratios of recent Marvel Studios films. Okay, so Ant-Man 3 had a domestic international ratio of 46-54, which means that 46% of its worldwide gross came from the United States, which it pretty much makes sense. I mean, the Marvel Studios movies are pretty domestic heavy. I mean, back in the day, you had movies like Endgame, which made the lion's share of their money outside the U.S. I mean, I think Endgame probably could have broken even without making a single dollar in the U.S. But, you also have a pre-Endgame film like Captain Marvel. Its domestic international ratio was at 38-62. So 38% of its money came from the U.S. That's honestly a really healthy ratio, especially when you consider that it made over $400 million in the United States alone. And then you also have Eternals domestic international ratio 41-59. This is a bit heavier than it should be because the international market was pretty COVID affected back when Eternals came out. So honestly, this split should be around 35, 65. In a perfect world where COVID wasn't that much of an issue and the film could really have a chance to succeed on its own merits. But the reason that these statistics are important is because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a really basic seventh grade level formula to extrapolate the overall worldwide gross of the Marvels. And let me show you how. So in the extrapolation section, basically the way that we calculated this was we applied the Marvel's domestic gross to Ant-Man 3's ratio. So the way we did that was, say for example, we took the lower end opening weekend of 121 million, multiplied that by 100, and then divided that by whatever the domestic ratio is. So it's basically a percentage formula saying 121 is 46% of what number? It's 46% of 263. So in that case, the Marvels would have a lower end worldwide gross range of 263 when you apply Ant-Man 3's ratio. I mean, it sounds complicated, but it's really all we have right now. Otherwise, we're just pulling international numbers out of our ass. But either way, when we take a critical look at that 263 million figure, we should honestly not even be discussing that when we're talking about a big budget Marvel Studios blockbuster with a budget of at least 200 to 225 million dollars. But no, it's $263 million is really a possible number when we're talking about this film. Now, personally, I would like to believe that we would see a final worldwide gross for the Marvels on the higher end, 410 million, because it doesn't make sense to me that a Marvel Studios film could make less than $300 million. I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was a piece of dog shit, and even that got pretty close to 500 million. So I think the Marvels, even if the film is complete crap, I still think it could have a decent chance of crossing $375 to $400 million. I mean, that's just me personally, just because the first film made $1 billion, and there's got to be at least some of those people that would just mindlessly buy a ticket to see the Marvels. All right, so as you can see right here, when we apply Captain Marvel's ratio to the Marvel's domestic gross range, we get 318 to 497 million worldwide. This is the best prediction I have right now in terms of the film making the most money. Marvel better hope that this isn't true. They better hope that that Box Office Pro is off by at least 100% in terms of all their numbers, because $497 million would be a loss of about, give me a second right here, $128 million theatrically, which, I mean, that doesn't preclude the film from eventually going into profit at some point, with merchandising and DVD ancillary streaming sales, but it would take a very, very long time for them to make up that difference. And even then, when you look at the opportunity cost, you spend $225 million on a blockbuster superhero film. You don't do that just so you can lose 128 mil. That's absolutely ridiculous. That wouldn't even be close to profit like Ant-Man 3 was. So yeah, 497 mil, that's the highest figure I have in here right now in this document. But in spite of it being the highest, it'd still be a complete embarrassment. I think if the Marvels does less than 700 million, that would be horrifying. That should be absolutely horrifying to anybody at Disney, okay? Because, again, you should not be spending this much money on the movies just so they can lose 100 million, or even then end up making razor thin profits. It's just it's untenable. Okay, so lastly, my last extrapolation here, when you apply the Marvel's domestic numbers to Eternals ratio, you get a final worldwide gross of 295 to 460 mil, kind of around Quantumania numbers on the higher end. But again, anything below 300 million, that would be, holy shit, heads need to roll time at Marvel Studios. And it's not good that two of the extrapolations here, which are based on comparisons that the media themselves were making with international ratios that range from pretty typical for modern Marvel Studios movies. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 had a pretty similar domestic international ratio, but then again, that franchise was always kind of heavy on the domestic side. But, even when we're applying pre-Endgame domestic international ratios, 38-62, we still can barely get the movie above 300 million on the low end. When you average all my lower end extrapolations together, this probably doesn't even come out to above 300 million. I mean, that's shockingly bad. That's indescribably bad for what is, again, a $225 at least $1 million Marvel Studios movie. So in the end, man, maybe they'll prove me wrong, but I have to agree with Box Office Pro, and they have been accurate in the past. There's no excitement for this movie, and the trailers, they've not been good. And I'm not one of those people that's just gonna write off the Marvels because Brie Larson's in it, and I hate Brie Larson for some indescribable reason. I don't really have a vendetta against the movie. I'm not ideologically opposed to it like some people are, because I think that's just fucking stupid. How about you just enjoy the movie on its own merits, and if it agrees or disagrees with you politically, just look at it in that way. Judge a movie by the story, not the fucking politics. But either way, man, with all that said, it's just, I don't have anything against the film, and I can recognize that the marketing does not look good. It kind of looks like a cheap, honestly, Disney Plus special. It does not look good. It's not good how the Marvel movies and TV shows are starting to look homogenous. It's really bad. This was even an issue with Guardians 3. It's like the production values are clearly much lower than they should be. And that's also true for the Marvels. I mean, sure, it looks better than something like fucking Secret Invasion, but Secret Invasion was an imitation of a prestige TV show. The Marvels should look like the blockbuster that they budgeted it as. It's like, how do you spend $225 million and your movie looks like a Disney Plus special? People will not go to see that. And, if the worldwide gross ends up being anywhere near any of these numbers, then heads need to roll at Marvel. Okay? It's like this should be an easy $700 million film if you at least make it mediocre. And they can't even do that. Change needs to occur at Marvel. Either way, man, those are my predictions for the Marvel's box office. I gave some pretty big ranges, so I may be slightly off like I was with Indiana Jones, although I was predicting that it'd go much, much higher because I thought that the general audience was much, much stupider than I really gave them credit for. But, yeah, man, the Marvels, it's not looking good. And I don't even have a vendetta against the movie. I don't care if it succeeds or fails. I got no money riding on this film. I'm not going to make like 40-minute rant hit pieces about the movie. I'm just looking at it analytically. I'm comparing similar films. This movie looks like a bomb. That's all there really is to it. Either way, man, I've been Jarvis Guy, the Void Yards YT. Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more diecast content, editorials, whatever. I guess this would be an editorial. Hope you enjoyed the video. I may do more of these if I see another embarrassing bomb coming up. And yeah, take care of yourselves. See you in the next one.